Tom, you were just saying that your mother had a, what, John? In your robes? A picture?
Yes, my mother has a oil painting that she made of me in my new Harvard doctoral robes, which I've worn at all subsequent academic events at Bridgewater State University, that kind of thing. Have the same one. Happy to say I can still wear the same robe all
Still
these
fits.
years. 51 years.
51 years. You mentioned also to me separately, Tom, that you've written 4 books, and 3 of them were dedicated to Anne, and 1 to your parents.
That is correct.
Wow. Which were?
The first book that I published, the 2-volume edition of the Chambers, Sir Robert Chambers - Samuel Johnson Lectures on the English Law. Very important, one of my most important publications. I dedicated to the memory of my father, who had passed away at the time, and to my mother, who was still alive at the time. And I thought that was appropriate because I owe everything to my parents.
Sure.
For being here.
Yeah.
And they were always supportive of me. The next 3 books that I published, my most important, my best publication, The Life of Sir Robert Chambers and his relationship with Samuel Johnson, and then the book that my last book, the book on the Ossian fraud and the need for truth in scholarship and in life. Those books and a third I dedicated to Anne because, as I've mentioned in my previous conversation about Anne having to work, even part-time, certainly full-time for much of her married life with me, because I just didn't make enough money on my own to support the family. And it saved me from having to take a second job, which many academics, people in the middle class have to do to make ends meet. She saved me from that, so that when I finished my onerous teaching schedule at Bridgewater State, I had to teach 4 courses every semester and prepare the 4 courses, and that would continue for the 51 years. I never taught fewer than 4 courses a semester, okay, while I was at Bridgewater State. And I try to be a good teacher, a scholar teacher in the classroom, and that requires a great deal of time in preparation to do it properly. But I also needed so many hours every day. I would commit to doing my research, my scholarship, and my writing of the actual texts of the books and articles. I also published about 100 articles in my lifetime, as well as the 4 books. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, as well as 4 books. So I've been a very active scholar and a very active full-time teacher. And Anne allowed me to dedicate most of my life to the academics, one, to get salary, but, and I must tell you this funny story. I'd publish these books, and Anne very loyally, never questioned. She admired me. She was not an academic herself, but she knew I was doing important work and that I was a major scholar in my field, and she knew that. And she had met many of the professors who were fellow scholars in the field, and they let her know that I was important in the profession. She would see me hours every day working downstairs in the basement of my two homes, the first home on Auburn Street, and then this home in Grange Park in Bridgewater. And she'd say, "You publish these books and you never make any money from the books." And I said, "Yes." She says, "Why don't you write books that make money?" Like, I said, to do that, that'd be a love story and so forth. I'd write a novel. She said, "Yeah, why don't you think of making a switch now? You're fully tenured at Bridgewater State. You don't have to keep doing this." I said, "Well, the problem is, if you want me to write a work about people falling in love, I'll have to do research on that, Anne." She said, "Forget it." That's a true story. Okay? I am not making that up. Okay.
Tom, who did you dedicate the
So
Adventures
Anne
of
deserved all of those dedications.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The first book, was the very first book The Adventures of Samuel Johnson?
No, Samuel Johnson and the Age of
And
Travel.
when was that published?
That was published in 1976.
So that was your first
That was
book?
my doctoral dissertation.
I see. And who was that dedicated to?
That was dedicated, I think, to Anne.
Okay.
My second book, if I said first book before, my second book was the law lectures, and that was dedicated to my father and my mother.
And the third book was the law lectures?
No, the law lectures was my second book. The third book was a biography of Sir Robert Chambers and his close association with Samuel Johnson. It was called Sir Robert Chambers, Law, Literature, and Empire in the Age of Johnson, and that was published in 1998.
I see. And the fourth book?
And then the fourth book, the middle two books were published by Clarendon Press at Oxford, the most prestigious press for publications on English literature in the world. And then my last book, Samuel Johnson and the Ossian Fraud, okay, that was published by Cambridge University Press in England.
Wow. And when was that?
In 2007.
2007.
And Anne lived to see all of these books published. She would die, that was published in 2009, and she would pass away from stage 4 lung cancer in 2010.
How long was she ill, Tom?
Unfortunately, fortunately, I don't know how you'd look at it, she was diagnosed, she knew something was happening in the fall of 2009, and she was diagnosed in January of 2010, and she was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. It had spread throughout her body. She was not eligible for surgery. And she died by October 20th of 2010. So she didn't last longer than about 7 or 8 months from the diagnosis until her death. She never smoked. She hadn't smoked. If she smoked at all, it was in the first year of our marriage, and she never smoked at all. After that, she was very, very staunch about exercising every day, belonged to exercise clubs while she was a nurse at Brockton Hospital, and Unfortunately, there's a genetic disposition in Ann's family, the Rowan family, R-O-W-A-N, the Rowan family, to cancer. And she died at the age of 64 in 2010. And I think that bothers me. It's difficult from a selfish point of view not to have Ann's loving presence in my life. But what bothers me most of all is that Ann couldn't live longer than 64. She missed out just on the joy of life itself.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, she was always your partner in this. She was your compatriot. She encouraged you. She did everything. As you said, she allowed you the time to do the work you knew
And
you
she
wanted.
called me her soulmate.
Yeah. Super.